All right, welcome back to Learn to DJ in VR. And in this video, we're going to be going over the CDJ. Okay, so you've got different setups here, and in Tribe, you can mix and match which ones you want. You can have these CDJs, or you can also have this turntable over here. We'll go over the turntable. It's a lot more simple. Um, to use and a lot more simple than in real life. It's pretty complicated to play your records, make sure your needle is balanced, etc. CDJ is got a lot of buttons and knobs and sliders and faders things. So um, we're gonna go over all of them right now. Okay, at least the ones in TribeXR that you're going to notice. And if you see my hand, if you see as it hovers over the parts here, you're going to notice well, that it certain buttons light up. Not every button is going to light up, and that means that we don't have access to that control. But this is a replica of the real CDJ 3000. Um, and then they've done a really, really good job of copying these, I mean, obviously they've done a little bit of a VR setup, but here, let's take a look at this. All right. Now, what we have here is kind of like four main sections. We have our data up here. So this is our song. That'll show us what's playing. We have a platter here, okay, and jog shuttle on here. So platter, jog, right? And we have a play and a cue. And the play, obviously, we know what that does. That plays a pause. Okay, so I'm going to load up some music here. Let's see what we've got. Let's try some. Well, all right, so we've loaded up a song, and in the song here, sorry, I got to readjust myself. All right, in the song here, we've got the information. Okay, so you can see the time remaining. Pull it up closer here. Got the time remaining. We've got the tempo. Okay, and we've got the BPM of the song. Now, this is the estimated BPM that the computer has calculated. It doesn't mean that is the BPM. A lot of times, too, if songs have complex tempos and they don't start out the exact way that, with a strong beat, record box can have problems. Like this song isn't really correctly beat. Um, the beat here is not really starting on the correct. We're missing these two things here. So what I'd have to do is in record box, I'd have to go in and reset that. Okay. So let me just put this volume down a little. So as we can see, when we press play, that plays and pauses it. And if you notice, there's a little bit of a slowdown. Okay, and that's controlled up here. So up here we have this thing called vinyl speed adjust touch break. And if we go a little bit closer, we can see, right? And turn this up or down. If you have it up just a little bit, it gives us this feeling of sort of a real vinyl, right? Uh, a real vinyl kind of playing. If you keep it really low, a lot of times I either keep it completely off or like that. All right. So the next to that, I want to bring your attention to um, so we have the data section, we have this platter section, we have the sort of play and repeat section, then we have these sort of section over here with the tempo control. And well, on this side, so you kind of have this here, here are the two kind of parts that you really want to pay attention to. Up here, there's some hot cue things, and we'll get into that in a second. But first, I want you to first focus on the jog mode. Okay, so this is the way that we control the music. Okay, so right now I'm sort of scrubbing, like in video terms, it would be called scrubbing. Um, but I can also do what's in a kind of CDJ mode. Okay, so you have two different modes here that you can see. Here we have a vinyl and a CDJ. And what does it mean? So in the old days, before there was any sort of CDJ like this, some of the first CDJs were from Denon, and they used to have a rack mount one, and it had a jog shuttle like a VCR. So VCRs, some high upscale like Japanese ones would have these jog shuttle controls where dial, you could dial, the you could dial the speed a little bit faster. So instead of you actually scrubbing like this, you're actually kind of pushing the song, but the song has to be moving. So now so if you hear that, I'm kind of pushing it along. I'm not actually, you know, and the same thing goes for going backwards. So I'm not actually moving it in reverse the way I would be if I was actually playing vinyl or if I was in vinyl mode. I'm sort of slowing the beat down by reversing it. Okay, so some people like to mix like that. I don't really usually use the CDJ mode. I usually am vinyl mode because I'm used to playing vinyl. So it took me a while to get used to these platters. Not just the VR ones, but also the CDJ ones. But after a while, you get to know when to start, when not to play. Okay. So that's really important to know. Also, I'd like you to notice when I'm in vinyl mode, I can still get that jog shuttle mode. And all I have to do is along the side here on the grooves, we have this jog wheel. And you just have to push that. And it's the same thing. It doesn't work when you're not playing the song. You have to have the song playing. And then you kind of just, and I use that a lot. If the beat is not quite lined up when I put it in, I can use this to kind of push it forward or pull it back. And you can see that's what those grooves are there for. They are actually for you to put your fingers in real life. Um, so that's what that's all about. And the control of the weight of this whole thing is right here. It's the jog adjust thing right here. And that's really important. I set this usually pretty heavy because I'm used to vinyl. So in real CDJs, I would set that kind of to the heavier side, and I find it kind of works in VR, in TribeXR as well. Moving forward, we're going to go kind of down to the next section. So I'm just covering this side really first because the jog shuttle, I think, is super important that you understand the jog CD mode and the vinyl mode. But after that, we have a couple of really super duper important buttons. We have the tempo range adjust, which is just above here. Let me just pull this camera over here so we can see it a little closer. The tempo adjust, and this is kind of a range. So how big is this tempo range here? So that this tempo range, how wide are we going to go? By default, it's plus or minus 6 or the original ones, but you can also go up to plus or minus 10 and plus or minus uh, 16, and then there's also a like infinite. So in this one it has an infinite mode, so it'll go 100%. So 100% slow, 100% fast. 100% slow means it stops moving. Let's check it out. Yeah. So that's plus or minus 10. So you can see what the range is. But sometimes you need to go more. Now this is minus 16%. See the range here? 73 BPM to 102, right? So that gives us a lot of range to work. And sometimes I will go, they say some of the first DJs I worked with always said never to go over like 6 or 10. If you can't mix it, then don't mix the song, type thing. But I think like sometimes you need to stretch it a little and go, a little bit further. So, getting those extra, like where you need to match that song with that song, then having that extra push helps. And then if we go to the highest, so you hear it, it's 100% faster here. Yeah, chipmunk funk. Okay, so there's 0, so minus 100%. So let's go here. We got, yeah, bit drudge. Yeah. All right. So that's chopped and screwed for sure. So, so I'll turn the. So one thing that's really interesting here that we should really pay attention to is the tone, to the pitch. So when I'm moving it up, I'm going to move that up to back to plus or minus 6. By the way, any button or whatever, if you just hover over it and then press A, it's gonna go back to its default. So, if I move this here and then press the A button on my thumb, it will automatically reset to 0, right? So the other thing I wanted you to notice though was this thing called master tempo. And that is really important because it is controlling the pitch. So when vinyl is usually in, back in the day when we were playing vinyl, if you throw the pitch off the tempo, it throws the entire pitch of the song off. And there's no way a band or instrument can actually get in key with it anymore because it's in its own tuning system. Okay, so master tempo fixes that. Digitally, we can lock the pitch, but still slow down or speed up the tempo of the audio file. So being able to do that opens up a lot of doors, especially as a musician. I play saxophone on top of my music, and being able to have a master tempo lock that, allows me to work with different music, know what key I'm in, and so on and so forth. So that brings us to finally the tempo adjust. And as you can see, I've been working with it. It is like we have this thing called tempo reset, which will lock your tempo to 0. It doesn't matter what you put this at. If I put this at tempo reset, it will do that. And you say, well, why would you have that? Well, it's like, well, what if your song had to be at this tempo for a certain part, and then suddenly you needed it to be at its original without moving this, and you only have a second to react. Having tempo reset is a great way to get that tempo right back to zero. Again, I used to actually DJ with a band and on vinyl, and we I would have to reset the tempo back to zero so that the band could actually find the key. So, having those tools are really, really important. Now, moving on, we're going to go over this sort of section, which I use a lot, and that is the loop section. All right. So, if you notice on the waveform up here, there's some red dots, and those are kind of what they call cue marks. And we also have these hot cues right here. And these are parts of the song where so as soon as I touch that, it jumps to that point in the song. And this is this is memory persistent. So that means that the song will the file will remember this. It's like metadata. So when you save it here in TribeXR, it actually leaves a bit of data with your each one of your songs that it remembers. Oh yeah, there's a marker here, there's a marker there. Um, the real CDJs also do this, and the same thing with Record Box. It also does this. They don't always work together. So, like if you have a controller, Pioneer controller, and you've set up your markers, they don't always work in. Maybe this has been updated. I'm not sure with the newer models that they're now talking to each other, because I do know that these guys are on a like the real physical CDJs are on an older kind of like operating system, and the controllers are working in Windows PC or a Mac, and they're in a different thing. So it's been a little bit difficult for me traditionally to have these all synced up, from one kind of platform to another. So if I say have a auto cue from my CDJs, and then I bring those files into a controller, it'll see them. It'll see the first one, but it doesn't have access to them. I can't like use them and jump around. So I have to recreate them. So that's something to note. But they're really important. I use them a lot. Not every song starts out the way that you want it to start. And so you need like to have these quick points set up. Also, I use this one up here a lot. So this is kind of the same thing as this, but this is kind of set up to be like, if you're jumping, say you're doing a live remix, usually we would use this one. And this kind of relates to this cue down here. And that's where I want to kind of bring your attention to finally. So we have this is like the master cue. And what is cue? So I'm going to bring the song back to the start using this track forward backwards. We also have a search forward and backwards, but I don't find that so useful because we can search the song up here with our finger. So if you see that, all I have to do is just touch this part right here. And when I do, I can just zoom along the song. And the new CDJs can do this. So it's pretty cool. Mm, So that's what this track search does. I guess you could do that, but like I said, I find this a little bit faster, a little bit better. So what is this thing here? And with this, I want to introduce you to this button up here. So this is called the cue button. It's just above the play pause. A lot of people don't understand why it's there. It's there to like test out your beat. Is your beat coming in speed? Is it, on the same right tempo? So you can quickly start back. You don't have to rewind. You don't have to play, rewind, play, rewind, play, rewind. You can just cue, 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 right? So it's one less button push. And it also helps us define like a starting point of the song. So when the song loads up, it's always going to load up to the first cue mark. And that's what this button up here does. So they allow you to memory, delete, and then search. So you can jump between them. So if I jump, see? So there's only 3 cue points right there. I'm going to jump back to the beginning of the song and I'm going to put one here. But if you notice, it put it over here. And if I hit my cue button, it snapped there. Even though I went here, just like I said in the beginning, the video, the song isn't really properly beat gridded. So, or, the beat grid hasn't been applied properly. So, um, it, the song is trying to start here, but it should be starting here. And I would fix this in Rekordbox normally. And we're going to go over that later in this course. But basically, you want this to start out here, and right now the grid is off a little. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to move it to there, and we do that by pressing play, and then that allows us to set the cue point. So you notice it's now blinking, right? That means it's in like a free state. So you can now set it to be at the point that you want it. But if I set it, it's actually going to set it over here. And that's because we have this little red button up here on. And this one is called quantize. All right, quantize. What quantize does is it's like a helper, and musicians, MIDI players might recognize it, understand it. It allows you. It basically snaps whatever you're playing to the grid. So if say you're playing and we have a quarter note quantization. That means no matter what you play, it will always land on the quarter note. So no matter how you tap, how whatever your rhythm is, it will always snap to the quarter note. So with quantization on, we're telling the beat grid, we're telling the record, the CDJ, that we want it to snap to the grid. But if the grid's not right, then that can cause problems. So I'm going to turn that off. Okay. And you'll notice that red light. See there, the quantize turns on and off. And as soon as I do that, I can just hit this cue and it stopped flashing. Now the play is flashing. I also hit the memory. And guess what? I have a memory mark here now. And it's right, right. Now let's get back to the cue marker and what it's actually used for. So besides setting out like where is the first point of the song, it's also great for testing out your BPM. Like, is your tempo correct? So when you're DJing, you need to first check. And in the last video we talked about the mixer, and we talked about how the cue points are where we listen. So we would turn on our cue, we would turn on our headphones here, and then what we'll do is actually right. And so when I tap it, I got to hold it down. So I'm clicking the trigger and holding down. And when I let go, it stops and it snaps back to the cue point. So that's kind of like how it works. Now, if you usually what you'll be doing is another beat will be going. You'll be like, okay, let me load up another beat. Yep. And sort by tempo. I usually tend to DJ in different tempos. So okay. So do you see what's going on here? So so what we'll do is we'll use it to sort of line up our beat, right? So we'll try to use it to get our beat ready, and when it is ready, then we can keep on playing it. So to do that, you can actually hold down Q and click the play at the same time. Okay, so you hold down Q. I'll say that again. You hold down Q and then you tap play, and it'll keep it playing. So that's in the real CDJs and here. So that's kind of how you use the Q. I want to show you now a loop. So this is auto loop. So I press this one here. It's called 4-beat loop cutter. And if I want, I can make an 8-bar loop. And it'll go wherever, especially now that we don't have quantization on, it will go whenever you press 4. So it's not quite there. So maybe I might want to jump backwards. Oh, so this will jump back like a certain amount. And then if you want to exit, you press this one, right? So I press, so there, I press, and then I pressed A to make it 2-bar loop. And the main thing is that you have to have your song analyzed, and it should be kind of close to, Tribe or Record Box should have analyzed it so that, pretty close to the tempo. If it's not, this will not work. Okay? So if you don't have it lined up and you still want to loop, you can do it still. Let me see. So I'll exit here, and you can see the loop is still there. I can actually save the loop too, right? So I just saved it now. So now if I go back to that, right? I didn't actually save it. It didn't actually save the loop. In the CDJs, it would actually save the loop if you press memory here. So that being said, if you want to actually if you want to mix like your own loop, you can do that with this in and out. And I've done this quite a lot too. I usually have my songs prepared so I can just sort of jump. I can use these, but sometimes you want to make your own loop. So you just go, see, maybe if I have I'm just testing if I have the cue activated when I memory it. Yeah, that is actually the case. So you have to have the cue, you have to have the loop active, and when you press memory, it will memorize your loop as well. So that's really cool feature that they carried over. Tribe, the people at Tribe did amazing work. So there's a bunch of other knobs on here that you can kind of play around with, like this play direction. If you find use for that, that will reverse or if that play your song in reverse or forward. Kind of cool for tricks. We also have this slip mode, which is kind of to deal with how the song is played, the platter, and then we also have the hot cue mode. Okay, so I'm not quite sure what's going on with this part of the button, but I feel like as long as you get this loop thing going, and as long as you have your hot cues set up and your grid of your song set up, also you have kind of these beat jump things here, but I've never. Oh, this is the beat jump. I got you. Okay, okay. So this is your beat jump up here, and then this is your moving backwards and forwards. I haven't really used these newer CDJs as much, so this sets the value, how much you're jumping, right up here, right, and then time. So we have that. So, anyways, yeah, that's it. Kind of the CDJ. It's a long video, but there's a lot of stuff to cover. It's a lot different because there's no place to put a CDJ anymore, and I think even in the real ones. But it's a great, great tool. It's like an instrument. So, you can do a lot of stuff with this. So that's it. Thanks a lot for watching. And I'm Sawtooth, and here for the Fantastic Planet. This is Learn to DJ in VR, and we covered the CDJ. We went over all the sort of parts that are important. I kind of demonstrated how to use them, and how I generally set one. One more thing I forgot to check, and that is a really important one. I guess a lot of people, mm, this one, the sync master thing. And I mean, some people get a little worked up about whether or not you should use this. I don't care. Use whatever you feel like using. It's your music, your mix. Um, but it basically will lock the tempo of whatever song, and you got to know which one is the master of the two. So in the real world, we would have these connected with a Ethernet, and we would have a router with an Ethernet connected to each, and then maybe even the mixer would also. So then the newer mixers have this visual at the top, and it knows it because they're all connected with a network, so that they know each other's songs, they know the tempos. The This sync master will choose one as being the master, the other one will be the follower, and and you can also key sync, you know, which I guess is a thing. But the only thing I would say to, before you start doing this is be careful, because if your grid isn't right, then the sync is going to be off. And a lot of times I feel like you have to touch by hand because the computer doesn't generate the right grid. And if you rely on this master thing, you don't have control. The CDJs are controlling like the tempo. You can change the tempo all you want, and it won't change because the master sync is overriding that. So, use it if you want. I don't, it, if it's, if it works, it works, but I tend not to, because I like to, you know, that's the whole fun of mixing, right? So it takes the fun out of it for me. So I don't really, that's why I kind of forgot to mention it, but it's there. And I thought I should do my, um, what, tell you about it. So this is, one is a sync master, and one is, so if I go, okay, so you say which one is the master, and then you just say sync. And as soon as I did that over here, beat sync, it snapped the tempo. So if you see here, tempo's 80, beat sync, it just jumped. And also, I cannot, you notice it's purple, cannot move it, it's locked. But again, this song is like just a random song, so I don't know if you notice the lines are matching here, but is the beat actually matching? Right? right. Doesn't sound very good. So, whereas I could actually beat match those if I take off the beat sync. Watch. See, and the beat's not exactly there. So that's, CDJ. Now, if I hit this master sync, it's going to mess everything up. So I tend to, music's an organic thing, so I tend not to want that part of it to be locked. Right. So that's it. It's all kicking off outside, so I might as well end the video here. And thank you for checking it out. This is the CDJ in a super nutshell. Um, Major parts, just again to recap, we have the platter. All right, this is how we move the music. It will always scrub when the song is in stop mode. And then we have this jog wheel also, same thing. But depending on which mode you're in, vinyl or CDJ, the platter and jog will swap. Uh, they will swap their role. So in CDJ mode, this will be more of like a jog, and this will be your scrubber, and that's actually how they are again in real life. And then in the vinyl mode, this is the scrubber and this is the jogger. Okay, so um, then we talked about the tempo and master tempo, very important. It's the first thing I turn on whenever I turn on my music so that it locks my pitch no matter what I'm setting my tempo at. We talked about play and cue and setting up cue points and cue markers. And finally, like loops and beat grids and syncing, stuff like that. So it's a lot to cover. Watch the video a few times, play around, play with a button, look it up on the internet, figure out what it does, and reach out if you have any questions. All right. So with that being said, I will catch you on the flip side. Thank you.